You're Norma Desmond. Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
I knew there was something wrong.
So way back in 1950, Billy Wilder made what is still the greatest movie about the movie business there's ever been. It's an added bonus that even 70 years later, Sunset Boulevard is one of the most tragic and funniest film noir love stories ever made. The story of a down-on-his-luck screenwriter, Joe Gillis, played by William Holden, and narrated by the recently deceased schmuck as he floats lifeless in a swimming pool owned by fading film star Norma Desmond, played by Gloria Swanson. Let's take a look. So right from the off, Joe's fate is sealed when he stumbles upon the crumbling old mansion of Norma Desmond whilst escaping a pair of creditors attempting to repossess his beloved car. It seems like the ideal place to stash his vehicle at first, but when he's mistaken by the home's famous resident as a funeral director, the one she's called out to see her dead monkey, no really, it sets into motion a chain of events that leads him to a dark, depressing depths of Hollywood and eventually to his final waterlogged resting place. Guys, I'm Stephen at Real Classic Film Reviews. Let me know in the comments below which classic film should be reviewed next, and subscribe to the channel to see more movie goodness just like this.
I'm going.
Just a minute, you. You're a writer, you said.
Why?
Are you or aren't you?
That's what it says on my guild card.
And you have written pictures, haven't you?
So having been wrongly invited in, Norma soon finds out that Joe is actually a scriptwriter, and it just so happens that she has a script, one so amazing it will catapult her back to the top. So Joe has a sneak peek at this script and realises that it's of course garbage, but agrees to stay and help her with it so he can earn money to pay off his car debt.
I just finished a script and I'm doing another assignment.
I don't care.
You know, I'm pretty expensive. I get $500 a week.
I wouldn't worry about money. I'll make it worth your while.
Trouble is, he doesn't actually end up getting any money, and he doesn't really get to leave the estate either. What he does get is the pleasure of Norma's company, her embarrassing devotion, and a never-ending stream of expensive, worthless gifts. It's a kind of symbiotic relationship at first, with Joe needing the gig and Norma needing the company. But he comes to realise that if he can get a new script off the ground with the lovely Betty, played by Nancy Olsen, he can make out on his own.
I mean, this is good dialogue along in here. It'll play.
It will?
Sure, especially with lots of music underneath, drowning it out.
Don't you sometimes hate yourself?
Constantly. No, in all seriousness, this is really good.
Also thrown into the mix is Norma's butler/chauffeur, Max von Mayerling, played by legendary silent film director Erich von Stroheim. His job is to essentially keep the home in order, but he also works tirelessly to create the illusion that Norma is still a huge and relevant star. Incidentally, von Stroheim actually directed Swanson in real life in 1932's Queen Kelly, a film she actually shows Joe during the film. So some of my favourite scenes in this film are the ones where Norma entertains Joe by showing him her old films, acting out scenes and actually doing a decent Chaplin at one point. She's hilariously nuts throughout and very melodramatic, and it's in these scenes that you can understand why her career never survived the introduction of sound and the popularity of the talkies. So a bit about the cast here, because every actor does a superb job in their role. So William Holden, who in a career featuring Bridge on the River Kwai, The Wild Bunch, The Towering Inferno, he has never been sharper than in this, and he takes Joe from being a bit whiny at first and a bit smug to someone who eventually kind of gets our pity and ultimately cares about Norma. He pulls it off very naturally, and it's convincing enough that you want him to escape and get his script written with Betty, but kind of also want him to end up staying with Norma in a way. So Gloria Swanson, a name that's kind of sadly been forgotten by modern audiences. She was a silent film megastar, and Swanson had been making films since 1914. She worked at such a rate that in the 10 years between 1920 and 1930, she made 29 movies. I'm actually ashamed to say that I haven't seen any of them. So here in Sunset Boulevard, in what is around her 70th acting gig, she turns in what's considered to be one of her greatest performances, one that's brilliantly over the top, perfectly playing an ex-silent film star, which is obviously exactly what she was at that point. Here she shows how her entire career, one based on silent cinema's exaggerated motions and expressions, hasn't entirely been left behind, taking her screen persona with her into everyday life.
Oh, wake up, Norma. You'd be killing yourself to an empty house. The audience left 20 years ago. Now face it.
That's a lie! They still want me!
No, they don't.
What about the studio? What about DeMille?
He was trying to spare your feelings. The studio only wanted to rent your car.
Wanted what?
Sunset Boulevard seems like a pretty simple story initially, but it really is one of those films that shows you more the closer that you look at it. And that sounds cliched, but I mean, I've seen it so many times that it's been a while since I'd last seen it until just recently. And I not only got to revel in its fantastic dialogue, but notice that the script really is an hour and 50 minutes of absolute gold, with two actors using it to go head to head. There really isn't a wasted moment. So this time round I also felt a huge pity for Norma and how her mechanism for coping with her career coming to an end was to essentially pretend that it hadn't. Her butler, who we also discover has an interesting and bizarrely shocking past, basically spends his time manufacturing her present by supplying her with a never-ending stream of fan mail and photos to sign.
I'm a star.
Norma, you're a woman of 50. Now grow up. There's nothing tragic about being 50. Not unless you try to be 25.
The greatest star of them all.
From past viewings, I always thought that her sanity had slowly started to slip away as it became more apparent that her return to movies wasn't going to actually happen, but I think now that she'd probably been that way for a lot longer, and it's only when reporters and police arrive at her home along with the press and their precious cameras that we get a true glimpse of how sad and disturbing her life has become.
The newsreel men are here with the cameras.
Tell them to go fly a kite. This is no time for cameras. Now, Miss Desmond, is there anything you want to tell us?
Cameras.
So Billy Wilder directs here, and this is maybe my personal favourite film of his, which is a tough statement to make, as he also made Some Like It Hot, Double Indemnity and The Apartment. He really keeps things moving throughout, and even with his razor-sharp script, it can be a tough ask to rinse so much entertainment out of a film that's essentially people just sat in rooms talking to one another. I also love the bizarre angle at which first introduces us to William Holden's Joe, shot from the bottom of a swimming pool, and the legendary staircase descent towards the end as Swanson glides down, almost like she's walking through a still photograph. It's all fantastic stuff.
Life, which can be strangely merciful, had taken pity on Norma Desmond. The dream she had clung to so desperately had enfolded her.
Also look out for a famous card game scene where Norma invites her old friends round to play bridge. If you know your classics, you'll recognise H.B. Warner, Anna Q. Nilsson and true comic genius Buster Keaton as the players. I'm not sure how scandalous the plot of Sunset Boulevard would have seemed in 1950, but a film like this probably wouldn't be as shocking to anyone now that we live in an age where most of society is obsessed with kind of seedy celebrity scandals. But watching on in awe as the relationship between Joe and Norma descends into madness and murder is the real draw of this movie. So nominated for 11 Oscars and winning 3 for music, art direction and screenplay. That night, All About Eve took home some of the bigger trophies. That's a great film without question, but if you had to choose one of those 70-year-old movies for relevancy and just sheer entertainment, it has to be Sunset Boulevard. Go check it out.
You see, this is my life. It always will be. There's nothing else. Just us. And the cameras. And those wonderful people out there in the dark.